Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be exploring the astrology of June 2025. So, yes, I'm going to say it's another big month. I'll get that out of the way straight away because we do once again have a major shift happening, and this is coming from Jupiter. So Jupiter is going to change signs, and it's also going to be having some important conversations with Saturn, which is newly arrived in Aries, and Neptune, of course, who is still finding his feet in this sign as well. So we have these big aspects going on between the social planets, that's Jupiter and Saturn, and transpersonal planets. So transpersonal planets are Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. So there's big conversations happening between the planets, which tends to manifest as kind of big conversations, big events, big movements, big changes happening here on planet Earth. Starting at the beginning of the month, we will have Venus moving into Taurus. So that's going to be on the 6th of June. This is important because Venus has, of course, had that retrograde where she went into Aries, stationed retrograde in Aries, went back into Pisces. And so it's taken her a long time to get home. Venus is at home in Taurus. She rules Taurus along with Libra, of course. And so when Venus moves into a different sign, it changes the quality of our relationships. It changes how we relate. It changes what we might be attracted to, what we're thinking of as important and precious. And in Taurus, this is a very practical sign. It's an earth sign. So we're really kind of getting into the body here. It is very sensuous. So partnered or not, to have that sort of physical connection to our physical body is really important. To love the body, to love the skin that you are in, regardless of size or ability, all these kinds of things, to love the body, because this is the first gift from planet Earth, the first thing that you arrived with. And so Venus going into Taurus reminds us of that. It reminds us of our connection to Mother Earth as well. So we might also say there is love of the land, love of the earth itself with Venus in Taurus. There's also a certain amount of loving the good things in life, which is fine. We can sometimes benefit from a little bit of indulgence. So maybe we want to have our favourite meals, or maybe we want to spend time with a partner. We just want quality time with the things we love and the people we love. It's important to slow down in Taurus as well. So if there has been a bit of kiss chase going on with Venus in Aries, then this is the time to just take a sort of beat and appreciate what we have in a relationship, or appreciate how a relationship is developing. Venus in Taurus can also make us very mindful about our money as well, because Venus can also be associated with money as well. So yeah, maybe we covet a little bit more with Venus in Taurus. Certainly the general theme of Taurus is wanting security. So we want financial security, but of course we want emotional security as well, to feel valued and to know our value in all ways. So Venus moves into Taurus, then Mercury moves into Cancer. This is on the 8th of June. So Mercury going into Cancer, this changes how we think. It changes what we're thinking about. Of course, Mercury has just come from Gemini, the sign that it rules. So moving into Cancer kind of feels a little bit more of a challenge. Mercury can work in this sign, of course, but it's very much informed by its emotions. So Cancer is a very emotional sign. So our feelings are informing how we think. We're likely to be thinking about, talking about, or to our family. Cancer is associated with family, home and family. These are the things that are on the mind with Mercury moving into Cancer. And then right on the heels of Mercury entering into Cancer follows Jupiter. Jupiter enters Cancer on the 9th of June, so just the day after. So this is the beginning of a long transit, a year transit. Jupiter is going to be in Cancer until June the 30th, 2026. So we have a whole year to enjoy this bountiful energy. Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. It enjoys being in this sign. And where Jupiter moves, it expands upon what it touches. So I was just mentioning how the sign Cancer is a very emotional sign. It's the first of the water signs ruled by the moon. It is connected to home, family, roots, and belonging. The biggest story here is that given that Jupiter does expand upon what it touches, it magnifies our feelings. But Jupiter is also a planet that is associated with faith. It's actually connected with the church. So we have the idea of faith and feelings. I have faith in my feelings. I trust my instincts. This is why it is such a helpful transit. Obviously, it's going to depend on how it's working in your own personal chart. Sometimes we've all got other aspects kind of going on. But generally speaking, Jupiter going into Cancer is incredibly helpful because it helps us to trust what we're feeling, which has perhaps been difficult because whilst Jupiter was going through Gemini, where it was kind of struggling, there was a lot of thoughts. It's all been about what's going on in the head and all these different conversations and opinions and arguments and debates, and nobody knows what to think anymore. And now Jupiter goes into Cancer and says, hey, let's slow down here. Again, that feeling of slowing down, getting really comfortable, once again, sinking into the body, because you need to sink into the body to feel the feelings. And then trusting that this is about the wisdom of our feelings. Jupiter is associated, it's rules Sagittarius, it's connected with higher education and broadening the mind. And so we get this feeling that we are starting to understand our feelings. And so you can apply this to wherever Jupiter is moving in your chart, your house with Cancer on the cusp. Jupiter is going to bring this opportunity for development here, and the development comes specifically from the fact that you are trusting what you are feeling. Now, for some people, it might be literal that there is some kind of development in family, in the home environment. Obviously, again, it's going to depend on where it is happening in your chart and how it's interacting with other planets in your chart. But generally, this might be a time of growth when it comes to house prices, particularly with Venus moving into Taurus as well. Might be a good time to put up the house for sale or to make a sale. There might just be general growth in real estate around this time with Jupiter going into Cancer. But certainly it is a nice transit that helps us to figure out what we're feeling deep down. And also I think it gives us a sense of belief, because it's almost like we're coming home to ourselves. We realize that if I have faith in myself, if I trust what I'm feeling, then I'm truly home, and nothing can get in the way of that, you know. So I really like this transit. I think it's going to be a very interesting sort of movement. Oh, the other thing I meant to say actually as well is that Cancer, because of the connections to the idea of mother and home and family, there's also something about nourishment here. So I think Jupiter in Cancer will help us to know what we need as far as nourishment, not just food, but also spiritual nourishment, emotional nourishment. This is why it's a very helpful transit. Also on the same day, Pallas is going to station retrograde. So Pallas is a problem solver. She is the sister of Mars, who tends to resolve problems through acts of mediation or diplomacy. She's the kind of character who uses her creative intelligence. She recognizes the patterns in how people behave, particularly people, because she's going to have a retrograde through the sign of Aquarius. So she's going to start the retrograde at 25 degrees and 13 minutes of the sign Aquarius and back right up to 6 degrees 39 minutes of the sign Aquarius. She will be in retrograde motion until the 5th of October. That's when she's going to station direct. So in your Aquarius house, there's going to be a prompt to re-examine what you know here, to re-examine your connections, Aquarius, the sign that's associated with friends and sort of social circle, to re-examine your connections, but also maybe just to simply re-examine what you're moving towards, because this is a sign that is future forward. Wherever Aquarius is in our natal chart, we also need to be progressive in our outlook, innovative, maybe kind of breaking with convention a little. So Pallas going retrograde here is we need to examine some of these views. Have you got stuck here? Remember, it's a fixed sign, so we can get stuck with Aquarius despite its rebellious nature and so on. We can get stuck here. So Pallas is sort of saying, how are you behaving here? What are the patterns at work here? Let's examine them and we can fix whatever the problem is here. On the 11th of June, we come to the peak of the lunar cycle. So this is the full moon, which will take place in Sagittarius at 20 degrees and 39 minutes of the sign Sagittarius. Generally speaking, at the full moon in Sagittarius, we have a high point that is connected to the idea of broadening our horizons. Again, Sagittarius, this is a sign that's associated with faith and belief. So what do we believe? And we've just got to compare this to what we know, and that's the sun over there in Gemini. So what we believe and the facts that are kind of facing us, this is the tension or the dilemma that's in the air around this time. But like I say, there is a lot of support in this chart as well to get really motivated and inspired. If you are interested in exploring this further, I do take a deep dive into each lunation for my paying Substack members and also for my patrons. I explore the chart in depth, all of the aspects, the Sabian symbol, any asteroids that are interacting with the chart. So we do this for every lunation. And I also do a weekly forecast as well, again, taking a deep dive into the astrology of the times to help you to understand the stories that are in play and how we might use those energies in our own lives, because we are co-creators with life. So full moon in Sagittarius, the 11th of June. Then on the 13th of June, I just wanted to flag up that we have the sun squaring the nodes. The sun in Gemini is forming a square to the south node, a square to the north node, south node in Virgo, north node in Pisces. So we are at some kind of turning point that is illuminated by the sun, that is connected with how we communicate, again, what we think we know, the stories that we are telling. And there does seem to be a bit of a correlation between the sun being at the bending of the nodes with sort of events that have some kind of tension here on planet Earth. They can often be natural events, hurricanes, volcanoes, earthquakes, these kinds of things. And sometimes it can manifest as sort of conflicts between human beings caused by humans. So just to be aware that there is some tension coming in there, and that is going to be accentuated because we're also building up towards a square between Mars and Uranus. That happens on the 15th of June. And we've also got a square between Jupiter and Saturn, and that's also on the 15th of June. So mid-month is where the most tension is. So let's deal with the smaller one first. Smaller, but not necessarily quieter, because Mars square to Uranus can indicate some kind of spontaneous action or sudden unexpected action. There can be sudden unexpected conflicts. Note that Mars is also opposite to Pallas. Pallas now retrograde, of course, squaring Uranus. So we've got a T-square actually here. So we've got an argument going on here, whether we take action, Mars, or whether we negotiate, Pallas. And Uranus in Taurus is saying, just like throw it up in the air and see where it falls. There's a kind of sense of frustration that's coming through here. I'm getting that phrase like throwing one's toys out of the pram, because Mars is in Leo, which is a sign that is associated with children, but it's also kind of very dramatic and a bit over the top. You know, having a bit of a temper tantrum is common with Mars in Leo. So we've got some kind of temper tantrum going on, throwing one's toys out of the pram, feeling really frustrated, maybe because we want to change things, but the tension is built up to such a point that we'll just kind of do anything to make things different, rather than taking a calculated risk. A calculated risk could pay off around this time, but it does need to be calculated, not just some kind of wild attempt at changing things. Now, positively, Mars square to Uranus, it can give us the courage to do something different, which is essentially what Mars square to Uranus is about. We do need to change our actions if we want a different result. If we aren't getting what we want by the actions that we're taking, then we have to do something different. But we also, like I say, need to do it in a way that's careful, in a way that's coming from the heart, and not just from this kind of boiling frustration and anxiety, because that can sometimes be a gift from Uranus as well. We can feel a bit anxious. So try to reinterpret that as excitement instead of anxiety, and then things might be a little bit calmer. So Mars square to Uranus, a bit kind of crackly energy that's going on there. And then on the same day, we have Jupiter square to Saturn. So this is the last of the squares between the two. And it does represent the idea now that we are in a phase of growth, because Jupiter is kind of asking us now to grow. It's asking us to move away from some of these limitations that we place on ourselves, Saturn in Aries, and instead remember that we have this deep instinct, Jupiter in Cancer. You can rely on yourself, says Jupiter square to Saturn, if you are responsible, Saturn in Aries, and if you have faith in your instincts, Jupiter in Cancer. Now also, of course, Neptune is very close by to Saturn, because the moment that Saturn entered into Aries, it also entered into a conjunction with Neptune. It's not going to be exact until next year, but they're pretty close together. So as we have this dialogue between Jupiter and Saturn, completing that phase, that square phase, Jupiter also makes the square to Neptune, and that's going to be exact on the 19th of June. Again, this is the middle of the month where all the tension is happening. So the square from the Sun to the nodes, Mars square to Uranus, Jupiter square to Saturn, and then Jupiter square to Neptune. So Jupiter square to Neptune, I can't remember if I said the date then, 19th of June. This is a one-hit wonder. It's going to be a one-off. There's not going to be any more. And it's a very interesting transit because we have the idea of expansion, Jupiter, that is meeting Neptune, a planet of spirituality and transcendence. So maybe there is something going on that is giving us this great big hope. There's a huge hope, maybe a wish answered, or it seems like that. The problem with this aspect is because it is a square, that maybe we believe what we want to believe. And that is Neptune's influence, because Neptune puts a lovely rosy glow over everything. It's romantic. It has that kind of soft focus kind of thing going on. And We see what we want to see. We believe what we want to believe. Neptune is associated with spirituality and meaning, and Jupiter, like I said before, with faith and religion. So we've got these very spiritual vibes coming in, but it's a bit off because it's a square. And maybe it's very easy to be misled, particularly with Neptune in Aries, the sign of leaders. So we're being possibly misled. It could be spiritually misled, or it could just be misled by somebody who has this kind of glamour about them, or it's just something that's going on in the world, this kind of feeling that everything is one big distraction, and we can feel it, Jupiter in Cancer, but we're getting gaslit, Neptune in Aries. So something weird is going on. Positively, this can be a really nice transit for anybody who is creative, because we can get lots of ideas, because Jupiter is expanding upon Neptune's imagination. So there's a lot of imagination that's happening here, which is great for writers and musicians and artists and anybody who can tap into that. But it is also a little woolly. So it's hard to use this energy. Now, whilst all of this has been going on with Jupiter, Uranus, in the meantime, will have moved onto the final degree of Taurus. So I'm just skipping back a couple of days. I wanted to talk about all the Jupiter aspects all together so that it makes more sense. So we're just kind of skipping back a couple of days to the 17th of June, when Uranus moves on to this final degree of Taurus. As it becomes anaretic, Mars is also anaretic as well in Leo. So although we've had the exact square between Mars and Uranus at 28 degrees of Leo and Taurus, now they're still very closely in a square aspect, both of them on these critical, volatile degrees, and it's already a volatile aspect, as I was explaining before. So all that unpredictable, rebellious, or downright crazy energy of Mars square Uranus has really become acute as Uranus reaches this last blast of the transit through Taurus. Next month, Uranus is going to begin its entry into Gemini. So any anaretic degree is critical because we're in this kind of liminal space between one place and the next. We're in no man's land, it's a wasteland, and it's an area that we associate with destruction. I kind of want to say deconstruction in some ways, but the word anaretic is related to the word for destroyer. So we already know that Uranus in Taurus has been really uncomfortable, because Taurus is a sign that's associated with stability and keeping everything the same, because that's what makes us feel secure and comfortable. But Uranus is a planet that speaks of revolutionary change and upgrading things and shaking things up so that they don't become stuck. And I've noticed that whilst Uranus has been in Taurus, we've had a lot of financial instability. So Taurus is very much associated with resources, our banking system, stock markets, all those kinds of things. So we've had a lot of instability in the stock markets. We've had instability and changes around digital money. So digital Uranus money, Taurus. And there has been a lot of problems with food instability as well. And I must say, as I think about it now, it's kind of horribly resonant with the awful images that we're seeing coming out of Gaza and the stories of babies that are pretty much starving to death, people starving to death because Israel is not allowing the aid to get through. So that in itself is very descriptive of instability, insecurity, of something that is an absolute fundamental to life. Taurus is associated with the things that keep us alive. It is about survival. So people's very survival is in this very shaky, with Uranus, in this very shaky place. And so whilst all that is happening, we've also got this trade war going on. So if we go back to the idea of Taurus being about money and investment and banking, like I was saying before. So we've got all of this trade issue going on with the tariffs. And as I'm recording, this is the 29th of May, there's just been news that the courts have put a block on these tariffs that Trump is trying to bring in, which has been causing all of this problem in the stock exchange. And we're calling it a trade war. It's kind of interesting, actually. I suddenly realized today that all this talk of war with Neptune and Saturn going into Aries, and we're kind of already there with this trade war. But anyway, so we've got this instability in the markets, trade war, money is up and down, and then we've got Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus, Mars at 29 degrees of Leo. This just so happens to light up Trump's chart like a Christmas tree, because his ascendant is 29 Leo, and so that puts Uranus at the top of his chart, about to enter his 10th house of career and public standing. And that means that Uranus is now square his ascendant and descendant, and Mars is on his ascendant. So all this unpredictable, this global unpredictable energy is incredibly active in his personal chart. So we could anticipate that he's either the recipient of or the executor of this very unstable energy. It might be a bit of both. We're already seeing these breakdowns in his alliances, because Musk has now just left the Doge or whatever it's called, and left the White House and started criticizing Trump for the tariffs. And so that little love affair seems to be breaking down. And so that is very descriptive of what can happen when Uranus squares the ascendant descendant. People do things that are unexpected, and that can cause reactions from other people. So I'm noting all of this because I think it is important, because obviously Trump, whatever we think of him, he has this huge position in the world that can affect so many different places, so many different people. And when we have a global energy that's in play, then naturally those big players on planet Earth are going to channel that kind of energy. And it's already, like I say, very, very active in his chart. Now, of course, it's going to be happening here for all of us. Each of us is going to be getting a dose of Uranus anaretic in Taurus, which, by the way, I don't think I mentioned before, that this final degree of Taurus is associated with the Pleiades and the weeping sisters. So the Pleiades are these 7 sisters who are in mourning. And so 29 Taurus is sometimes associated with difficult experiences, things that make us weep, things that make us unhappy. On an individual level, when we're looking at this degree, it's not immediately saying, oh, this is going to be terrible things. What it is saying, it is speaking about of where we need to grieve for those things that we no longer need. And sometimes we do need to just kind of say, okay, this situation that I'm really trying to hold on to because it makes me feel safe and secure, Taurus, it's time to let it go. It needs to go because it's actually making me uncomfortable. It's not working anymore. There's no space for growth anymore. So that's how 29 Taurus can sometimes work for us. It's not necessarily a bad thing, a bad experience, a bad event. It's more about addressing the feelings that are coming up that are stopping us from progressing in life and settling for what we have rather than continuing to grow. So these themes, these stories are going to be in play all the time that Uranus is sitting on this final degree of Taurus. It will move into Gemini next month, July the 8th, if I remember rightly, and it will come back into Taurus. So there will be a little bit more work to do before Uranus finishes in Taurus completely. But we're on this last chapter now. So we need to start freeing up time, energy, resources for the next part of the journey, which will be when Uranus goes into Gemini. Now, right after Uranus became anaretic in Taurus, Mars enters Virgo. So that was also on the 17th of June. And so where Mars moves, it changes how we act. It changes how we go after our goals. It changes sometimes what our goals are. And in Virgo, now we have emphasis on being of service, of using our skills, honing our skills, using tools. Like Mars in Virgo always makes me think of handyman and people who can put things together and take things apart and fix things. This is a sign that's associated with health and well-being and improving on everything. So we're tinkering with the little things because we want to improve things. This is where we're placing our energy. So wherever your Virgo house is in your own chart, now you get a boost of energy and the desire to focus on these small things that's going to try to fix something. The problem is that sometimes we can get frustrated more easily with the little things because we want to fix something. So that's where we have to watch the Mars energy, that we don't end up sweating the small stuff. But generally speaking, it's a helpful transit. It's going to help us with our daily routines and just getting on with the day-to-day of life. And we've got the energy now to deal with some of the messy jobs or the jobs that require a lot of attention that we didn't want to do before. So Mars enters Virgo 17th of June, Jupiter square Neptune 19th of June, and then we enter Cancer season. On the 21st of June, the Sun enters Cancer. Of course, this is a very important point because it denotes summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and, of course, winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. Either way, it is a celebration of light, a celebration of our sun. Midsummer is the time to acknowledge our star, without which we would not be here. So the sun goes into Cancer, of course, now illuminating all the themes we've been talking about with Jupiter in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer. So this is the time to come home to the self, to remember the light within, to remember your connection to your family. And it's not just your own family, it's also the family of humanity. So remembering that we are all one family. I'd love to say happy as well, with Jupiter being there. Maybe that is the point. He's saying, look, you could be one big happy family. But we keep fighting, we keep niggling about things. So the sun going into Cancer is just going to put the focus on, again, listening to our feelings, connecting with our family, coming back to the self, coming home to the self, and remembering that we belong here because we were born here. If you were born here, you're meant to be here. So Mars will then sextile Jupiter on the 22nd of June. So we've got a lot of activity going on here. So again, we're fixing things at home, dealing with the little things, the broken handle on the drawer, or decluttering, or whatever it is that you need it to be. It's an excellent influence, and the sun's going to join in with that with a conjunction to Jupiter on the 24th of June. So typically a day that's often touted as being a good luck day. And yeah, maybe we do get a little boost of good luck here because the connection to Mars is still in play. So the way we could read that is, if you believe in yourself, Jupiter conjunct to the sun, and take one small step, some practical action, Mars in Virgo, then you're going to be able to hit your goals. Then you're going to attain the objective that you set out to do. So self-belief, Combined with action, this is a perfect time for pushing things forwards. On the 25th of June, we then have a new moon in Cancer, and look where it is, right beside Jupiter. So here we go, says Jupiter. Time to set the seed of intention that I'm going to listen to my intuition. I'm going to listen to my gut instincts. I'm going to believe in myself, and I'm going to develop emotionally as well. So a really interesting new moon that is filled with faith and nourishment, and the idea that there is something bigger that we're working towards, this bigger life. Something is inspiring us to believe in ourselves. And then the final aspect of the month is Mercury going into very playful Leo. This is on the 26th of June. So now we are thinking in fiery ways. We are thinking about how we could be more playful with life. We're thinking about things that are nothing to do with work and responsibilities. We're thinking about date night. We're thinking about taking up a new hobby. We're thinking about how we can express ourselves creatively. We're talking to the kids, if you have children, and kind of getting down to their level and seeing what they see, because that inspires our own inner child. Mercury in Leo certainly makes us more confident in our thinking, more likely to speak up. Sometimes that can be problematic, of course, because Leo is a sign that, I said earlier, can be associated with drama queens and arrogance and pride and these kinds of negative attributes. So we do have to watch that. Even more important to note, though, this is not going to be an ordinary transit because, yes, you guessed it, Mercury is going to have a retrograde here. So the retrograde is going to start on the 15th of July, and that means that Mercury is going to be in Leo right up until the 2nd of September. So the entire summer, basically, we're going to have Mercury in Leo. So it should be a very interesting time because it is a very creative energy, but we just have to watch the tendency to identify too much with what we think and too much with our own opinion, and to kind of take offense when other people think something differently. Because Leo is a fixed sign, it's important that we remain open to other people's ways of seeing the world, and that somebody seeing the world in a different way is not necessarily an attack on our ego or kind of self-image. So Mercury going into Leo is going to have a lot to teach us. But the main thing is to remember that you have a voice. Lift up your voice for those who cannot speak up for themselves. And for your own mental health, make sure that you allow yourself some time for play. I think we forget that sometimes when times are hard and things are difficult in the world. We can feel like we're not allowed to do that, or that it's a little flippant because there are other things going on that we should be speaking about, talking about, thinking about, or doing something about. But we also need to protect our own light sometimes. So give yourself a mental health day, do what makes you happy, and that is going to help a lot. So this brings me to the end of this reading for June 2025. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do click a like, subscribe, comment. All the things can be very helpful for the algorithm. If you enjoy my work, as I mentioned during the reading, I do have a Patreon, Substack, there's my website as well. So I'll put all my links below. I will see you again soon. And in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.